Yes, my guest today, author, Nana visitor for Open a Channel, The Women of Star Trek. Today on, can you believe it, Trekland Tuesdays live, number 376, with me, Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek, coming at you for some sanity, clarity, and a bigger picture in all things Star Trek. Let's bring her in. You know her as Major Kira, Colonel Kira by the end. And she's been such a voice for Star Trek and all it represents. And, you know, especially since the pandemic and around, even our sanity and some mental good health. A lot of you may know her mainly now as Mama Nana, but why beat around the bush anymore? She's got a great book that's out now. Open a Channel, a woman's Trek. It's the women of Star Trek. And it's a topic that's, well, it's been addressed before, but never like this, guys, gals, peeps. So let's bring her in. I am so pleased to have with us today right now. Nana, let's make you an equal partner here. Okay.
Thank you, Larry. I'm glad to be here. And I love that I can see people talking. I like this live stuff. I haven't done
oh, you haven't done a
live? No.
No, okay.
No, that's kind of cool.
When I'm just on by myself and I have like a little soapbox topic for the week, when I don't have a guest, I always get through that. And then I go back and retry. I think I'm the only one that does that. Go back through the chat. So, but live things have a chat going and we can talk, and then it's okay because I'll back thread. I'll back scroll and get
got it.
So, but if something leaps out at you and you want to get, it's totally on you to go
all right.
do it. But so tell us something. You've been out talking about it. The book's out now. It's available, right? Yes. In fact, we're reprinting. I am still waiting on my hard copy. I had some giveaways that people are still waiting because I guess, no, you're just too popular.
I'm really glad people are reading the book. I'm really glad about it because I think it offers a perspective for everybody, not just for women and not just for, it's about our culture. It's about the women of Star Trek, the cultures of the different decade, but it's also about the audience and what they took from it and the amazing spirit of people when they don't have a mentor around them as children. Mm-hmm. So many people found Star Trek and found a virtual mentor in the characters. And that was something I discovered over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of interviews. And it really, it grounds you in how important storytelling is.
Yeah. Well, another benefit of, Star Trek is its own thing, but using Star Trek as a nearly 60-year franchise now, it's a perfect structure to look at the evolution of Hollywood and the sexual dynamics and things at play and work, as a it's glamorous Hollywood and all that, but it's a reflection of what was going on in the country at large and getting us from the 60s to today and all the different shows across the series across time, which right. I realized I didn't, it's one thing to say, oh, here's my collection of interviews with women from Star Trek. And we, if we're lucky, we'll touch on some powerful themes, but there were so many structured things that you set up with your introduction, even to say, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And it's almost like Star Trek doesn't make it an option. It's like, you're going to tell the story of Star Trek and you're going to talk to its women components. This is just going to be a story that tells itself.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, as someone who's done a lot of interviews, it's hard to get granular because you start to have these talking points, and you are protecting people's idea of your character, you're protecting the audience, you're protecting the franchise, and to just kind of take those threads and go, wait a minute, what was difficult? What happened? Why? And Star Trek is so amazing for women because there are so many alien women. And that's the key. The minute you're an alien, you don't have to stay within the boundaries that women in the 90s had to. My character certainly didn't. And I started to represent what real women out there were, because that's what I was. This whole spectrum of emotions, someone who makes mistakes, someone who falls down and gets back up. someone who it has issues and problems, and it was actually the aliens. You know, the
Mhm.
aliens are more representative of the larger part of society than we ever realize. And
Yeah.
it's a wonderful way to be able to look at yourself, because no matter who you are, at one point or another, you have felt outside. You have felt like an outsider, like you didn't belong.
Well, that's, I think the last 40, 50 years we've looked at, you talk about the original series, and we have like Francis Nguyen's character, Alana Troyes, and the Romulan commander. They're both aliens, played by humans, obviously, but they're allowed to be that more so than almost any of the other, the human actresses playing humans, even in their supposedly future century. But it's one of those things that time has brought us.
Of course.
Reflecting back on all, there's Majel and Nichelle, and then I started to say poor Grace Lee. Her, I'm glad the way her career in life ended. She kind of made a comeback and was out there so much. Everything from being sober to finally opening up about her tragedy there with the abusive producer and all that. But
But I think
but,
it's
but what
also,
the world she lived in and how she was reacting to it. And
I think it's way more than just the abusive producer. I do think it's the Hollywood system.
Mhm.
And Hollywood, after all, is another system, and it works just like all the others. And she really, that's what I noticed in a lot of the older women. They decided that no matter what the currents, the cultural currents were against them, they were just going to work harder. So, double competency, all of that. And she not only did that, but took on the guilt for not sleeping with the right person, for not, if you read her book, it made me so
Mhm.
sad, and I wanted to jump back in time and go, "Grace, no, wait. This is not your shame to have."
Right. Right. Which I think she was getting to by by the last few years she was out, and as the world around was changing and all that. But again, let me start back just a second here. So what's the origins of this,
Of the book?
of the book, the whole project? Was it a pandemic boredom? Oh, I should do this, or was that part of it, or
No,
before,
no,
or what?
no, because I don't think you write a book like this out of boredom. You write it out of burning need, and running upstairs many times going, "I can't do it. I'm overwhelmed. There's too much. I'll
Mhm.
never be able to." It's not something that you just go, "Oh, that'll be fun." And I did it because a man opened the door for me and said, "Would you like to?"
Mhm.
Ben Robinson, my
Mhm.
editor, said, "I think that a book about the women of Star Trek should exist, but I don't think I'm the one to write it. And would you be interested?" And the original concept was a paragraph. I would write a paragraph about each woman in Star Trek and maybe find an archetype that represented them. And there would
Mhm.
be a piece of art on the other side that represented them in that archetype, which is a cool idea and probably should still be done. To Ben's amazing, I give him so much credit for letting me take this book to what I
Mhm.
wanted to do,
Just
an exploration
Mhm.
of the women's lives, what they were going through while they were inspiring other people,
Right.
and what the other people got from it, and what this community, I mean, I call Star Trek a frequency, because you start a conversation with someone that is into Star Trek with a certain amount of ground under you both,
Right.
and you can enter the conversation. And I have with so many people for decades now, in such a wonderful way. It's pretty great. And that also made it very important to close this circle and understand what the effect is, because the audience had a huge effect
Mhm.
on me. The way I would go to a convention while I was filming. I'll tell you one story
Right.
that early on, there was an elder who was in line, and now when I think of it, I want to pick her up and take her and sit down and ask her story, which is what I would do now. Um, but she just very quietly showed me the numbers on her arm and said, "Your
Mhm.
character means everything to me."
Yeah.
And that she could have an avatar in a TV show and feel emotions, but have it be slightly off to the right instead of maybe about her was probably a great thing. So having that experience, you can bet that I go back to filming, and no matter what's going on, I am I have her in my head, and
Right.
I'm doing it for her. And this happened over and over again, not the same circumstance, but people saying, "This is an avatar for me. This is a mentor for me." And so the responsibility, the social responsibility started to be built into the Star Trek performance. It wasn't just a Hollywood job for me anymore.
Right. Right. You and so many others,
And
and
so
behind the
many
camera as
others.
well. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You cannot, because of this dynamic, you can't miss the importance.
Right. Did that okay. I want to talk about a lot more of this range of women that you've talked to. But just since you brought that up about when, over the 7 years of Deep Space Nine, when do you have a rough idea when you had that conversation, and how things were? I'm curious as because I've seen this happen with so many of the Trek people. Now it's a lot less now, but back in the day before the geeks won and we became a pop culture world, right? It was the
Yes.
currency now.
Oh, yes.
In the old days, it took a long time. Like the original series cast were totally flummoxed and blindsided by the movement, and they became gods and demigods, but they could barely pay their rents in the 70s and 80s, right? And then each succeeding show has assumed more of the expectations and the benefits, and also the effect it has. Like when the astronauts go to the moon and they're forever changed. When for you along the DS9 curve did that happen? When you got out to because a lot of them didn't want to go to conventions. Oh my God, what am I going to do? I have such pressure. It's like, no, they love you the minute you walk on. It's the only job. Somebody said it's the
No,
only
it's
job in show
scary.
business where they love you before you ever say a word on stage.
Yeah, but that's not what it feels like. When you're backstage and there's a bunch of Star Trek people, you go, they love the show. Do I fit into this thing that is so important to them? It's for me, that
Mhm.
was certainly the emotion. Um, it- uh, DS9 is a little different because DS9 was like this, whoop, wait,
Right.
that's Star Trek.
Mhm.
And we forget this now, but back in the day without streaming, it was serialized and people didn't get it and weren't able to follow these arcs that the writers were doing. And really, when I noticed a huge shift, was when it started to stream
Right.
and people could watch it like that. And I remember on X, formerly Twitter, why do we have to keep saying that? Uh,
I,
but
I
X,
still say Twitter as long as I'm still there, but yeah.
yeah, yeah. I remember seeing someone post, DS9 is trending. Why? And I love that. And it was like, yeah, why? We all felt that way. But it was because
Right.
people were starting to get it. And it's it's the missing link of how do we get to this utopian society? Well, we stay on this space station and all these diverse people have to figure it out, and it's not going to be easy. And I think that it's valuable because of that. Also because it wasn't necessarily, and Avery Brooks used to say this, it wasn't the exploration out, it was the exploration
Mhm.
in. It was traveling from here to here, the 12-inch journey. And certainly between people. So it was important in that way, but I did not. No, I never felt the conventions were always like, oh, you're on DS9, you're lower tier. we were
Right.
treated that way. So yeah, it's only lately that DS9 has really come into its own, I'd say.
Yeah. I mean, one of the old knocks used to be, "Oh yeah, it's the Star Trek that doesn't go anywhere." And
Right.
I was, and now we look at it and say, "Oh, it's the Star Trek that went so far." But it's, as you said, the 12, yeah, within,
Yes.
within. But it took the Netflix revolution for people to get over that. And then for people to have had that attitude, this is what I try to guard against. It's like whatever you thought at a certain time period or in your own life, whatever you thought about the show in the 90s, have you gone back and revisited that 20 years later? Like, the world has changed and you've changed. And yeah,
Yes.
and streaming
So
allows it and Netflix allows
so many people have told me, "Oh, back in the day when I was so much younger, I did not get it."
it.
And I'll say that I saw something on Instagram. It was a young man, I don't know, maybe 15, saying, comparing the crew of Next Gen to the crew of DS9, and of course, had glowing things to say about Next Gen. And we were all, decrepits, and I was this fighter and messed up, and everybody was awful. And I understand where a young person would go, please, it's hard enough. And I'm entering the world. I want to know that there are rules.
Mhm.
I want to know that I can just make a straight line here. It's that life is black and white. But as you get older in your 30s, people go back and go, oh, I get it now. Because you learn life is lovely shades of gray.
Yeah. Well, speaking of shades of gray and black and whites, let me pull back to the book here. So Ben hatches the idea and then lets you go with I mean, was the scope always fun? Because you've got tons and tons of interviews here, and even the ones that aren't features you mentioned, like I know Andy Kindred was so excited when I heard when she told me she had done a sit down with you, and she just had done her own book, which
And
is
then and
amazing.
then we saw each other for quite a few other things because she is
Mhm.
such a force and such an interesting human.
Yes, and has gotten herself over to the States where she's more the last few years where she's more there. But I'm saying is, even if you scan the table of contents, there's so many names there, and all the eras are there represented. But I know you've got other people
Oh,
working through your narrative too.
but you not enough. There were so many people I missed because it was the pandemic, because I would, get to their agent and it would fall off, and I know what that's like because sometimes my agents don't tell me, when I get an interview, but also everyone was doing a million Star Trek interviews, and now what's this
Mhm.
one? They didn't know what I was trying to do with the book. Maybe they thought I was going to, point fingers or make it something explosive, which is not at all the point. I believe in calling
Or
people
just
in,
happy and glossy, if
or
nothing
a
else.
happy and glossy, and who
Yeah.
wants to be a part of that again? Yeah, it was it was a slow process because Andy was one of my first interviews. And after interviewing her, and she gave me hell, I went, "Okay, I do not know even a little bit enough of interviewing, or, a bias, or what Black women have gone through." So I stopped and I educated myself. I love to
Mm.
read anyway, so I stuck my nose in books and took notes like I was in college and taught myself what I needed to know. And then I would go further. And then I would interview a young woman and go, whoops, I don't know what young women are thinking. I need to find some young feminists and read their books. And that's what the process was. It was stop start, interviewing lots of people, and then coming down to this tiny office and writing it down and watching tons of Star Trek. I'd never seen the full scope of it. So there was no way I was going to write this without watching it.
And having all your subjects, if nothing else, in their context.
And the wonderful thing about that was I became such a fan. I understood what people were talking about. When they said Seven of Nine was so important to me, astronaut Samantha Cristoforetti, Seven of Nine. It was like, what? Really? No, really? I'd never seen the show. So, but
Yeah, yeah.
I felt free to judge it without seeing it. But when I saw the
Mhm.
arcs, when I understood how 7 of 9 was written, I saw she was such a Trojan horse, you know, come
Mm,
for the costume, but then stay for all this rich growth
mhm.
of an entity and struggle and compromise and relationships. Huge.
You've got Grace Lee, Nichelle, Majel. Oh, I love you've got a chapter about Lucy. That's great too. Then we've got all the series. You wind up with Melissa Navia and Jess Bush and Christina, Tawny, Mary, the Marys from Discovery, and Michael, and Sonequa. I mean, obviously we go, well, that's an arc, that's history, different eras, different styles of TV, Star Trek, streaming versus network. But was there anything else that struck you as a surprise, or once you put all those pieces lined up, you went, oh, and here's another level? Or I'm just curious because you've just tackled such and with the next gen DS9 Enterprise Voyager in the middle. But I mean, did something after that big a scope and you stood back on the meta level here
I made
surprise you?
yes, that they carry much less baggage
Mm,
than my age woman did, than women in their 50s do. That they have a very different experience, which made me so happy that they have, um, and it made me go, boy, as an elder now to them, I don't want to teach them old ways. I don't wanna say, "No, you gotta be careful." Mm-mm.
mhm.
That's where the back and forth has to happen intergenerationally. So I can understand where they are and what they've achieved down this whole line of us, so that I don't go, "Oh, no, here's the baggage I have, and now you should carry it." They don't need that. We need to learn some of what they got.
Hmm. But I think it's helpful for them to know the texture of what
You
if
need to know
right.
because, well,
You got to know your history, but
you
still, yeah.
have to know your history because it slides back, and that's just the way it is, and you think you've achieved something. Brandon Braga told me one of the most interesting things, uh, when I talked to him about Enterprise, and by the way, he was so forthcoming
Hmm.
and so honest. I respect him so much. And I said, "Wait, you did Voyager, and then what happened for the women of Enterprise?" Because there was a lot less opportunity,
Hmm.
and there were structures keeping them, to me, to my eyes, somewhat down. And he said, "We thought we did the work. That was our show about women, and we thought that would prove what we
Oh,
intended." And it just proves you can't. You have to keep you have to keep pushing the envelopes for everybody, for everybody.
wow. Well, now obviously you didn't get to sit down and talk with Lucy. I mean, some of these, I don't know if you took them from recorded or their own books. I know, I guess that's Grace Lee's.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
that yes, I read Grace Lee's book, which I highly recommend. I really do, because that really shows you what a
mhm,
woman in the 1960s, not just in Hollywood, in any
right,
system,
right.
thought were the rules and tried to live by the rules. And I highly recommend that book. But yeah, I read about Lucy, took it from interviews, from filmed stuff, from watching her work on set, which was very interesting. But they did something. Think about this. Think about if Star Trek was done, the original Star Trek was done, and it sat there and was never in reruns.
Right.
Desi Arnaz in particular, decided to start filming the shows so that so he could monetize them later on. And this this repetition, the fact that I saw original shows when I was, a child and can still watch them now. That kind of regularity and, knowing it's there, that it's like something you can touch and go, I, it's great to have it. And it's important. And it sure is the drip of information into our brains of the things that Roddenberry was trying to get across.
Yeah. I just, so I guess what I'm going to get around to is all of the, oh, and you've got Dorothy Fontana in here, which with her own section, which I love too. Some of the hero, like Dorothy Fontana and Jerry Taylor that we just lost, the humblest women are the ones that were the biggest, quiet revolutionaries.
And
I know.
so experienced, so many shows before Star Trek. And that's something that I didn't expect to find. And with the guest stars that I interviewed, that was true too. Franz Nguyen was an enormous star. She was doing films with all the leading men. And, I just thought, oh, there was a woman who was acting at the time and just did it. Who knows what? No, she was experienced. They all were. And they were all in this system working so hard and feeling it's their responsibility to make sure nothing happens. Because if something happens with somebody, someone tries something, they may get fired. It made me so sad when they would say, well, I avoided it and thank God, because I probably would have gotten fired.
Yeah.
Both things. So yeah, the women were responsible for all of it back then.
Yeah. And I see, so you got Jolene Blaylock, who was, did you do a sit down with her?
Could not reach her.
Good,
Did
yeah.
everything through every channel. I so wanted to talk to Jolene and could not get her.
Well, like you said, that whole enterprise. Well, you mentioned Brandon, so you talked to some men along the way.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
talked to many men and in the audience too, who were influenced. Look, I mean, back when I watched the original Star Trek, my mentor was the captain. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to follow lines that I wanted to be William Shatner's character. So there were a lot of men who, just my character, for the fact that she was allowed emotion at all, that was a big deal.
Right.
Also, men who were sons of single mothers were very affected by Dr. Crusher, because they could feel as little boys, wait a minute, it's not so shameful. And remember, being divorced was shameful for a woman back then in the 80s. It's not so shameful. My mother's divorced and a professional. It's kind of cool. Look at Dr. Crusher. That's huge.
Yeah.
That's grounding children in feeling okay about their lives and their circumstances.
Yeah. What about, and I've kept you for a half hour here, so I don't want to abuse that too much, but like I said, I got my copy late, so I'm diving in, but just getting through the initial chapters and just reading your intro and the setup and the structure. And of course, you bring in your personal recollection of the different stages of career and Hollywood and Star Trek and dealing with fans, and you touched on that. But what's is it trite or too easy to say, like how the whole process has changed you?
No, it isn't. It really isn't too trite. It did in big ways, educating myself about the history, about I went down a rabbit hole with, because I thought of the drips of culture in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. What was that? What were we affected by? What was my mother affected by? And looking at commercials and that told men how they should respond and how women, what their jobs were, looking at print ads that were shocking. Just do it. I have a whole list here I'd love to read to you, but just do it. Look at some of these ads and you go, okay, so that's where the programming kind of starts. And understanding that, understanding how I got caught in the amber of the 80s and 90s where
Mhm.
I came up.
Well,
And
yeah,
right, and the cultural cues that I
that's the
took on,
way it was as you
that's the way it was. And,
yeah.
these cultural cues kind of, put me in stone, that I didn't know what was me and what was a
Mhm.
stone until I started doing this work and started breaking it off and going, Wait a minute, that's not necessarily the way to think." The other thing it did for me was make me cry a lot.
Mhm.
With and someone just talked about Mel here. I wish I could talk to all of you, but they talked about Mel, who's a chaplain that I interviewed. The the goodness and the deep humanity of the people in the audience that I talked to, it makes me wanna weep, uh, and gives me great hope and courage, um, something that Mel talked about. And the other thing it did is I used to think that other women, because Hollywood was set up this way,
Mhm.
they were my competition.
Right.
Now that I've spoken to all these women, they are all people I root for, people I go, Sonequa, what are you going to do? You're going to own a station someday. I don't know what you're going to do, but you're going to do something. And I'm watching them and hoping that they get what they want out of their lives, instead of going, "Uh-oh, they got that. That means I don't have it." It's such a
Mhm.
stupid and convenient way for women to
Right.
think. It's
Or,
convenient
"Uh-oh."
for people, other people, to go, "Look, don't talk to women. They're your enemy."
Yeah.
Like, no, we're pretty powerful if we do.
Well, divided and yeah, or, "Oh, no, you're bearing down on 30 and 35 and 40.
Right.
You better, have you got your directing skills up so you can, pay the rent?" I mean,
That's right.
so much, so much.
That's right.
Have you got, I had one other
Instead
question.
of mentoring them
Mhm.
to direct or whatever else. It
Right,
doesn't
right, if
have to
that's
be
where your
directing.
path
You
goes,
wanna,
but if it's a
yeah.
survival.
You wanna be a
Right.
gaffer? Let me show you how to do that, whatever it is.
Right, right. Can I ask you a couple more things? Let me ask you this, and meanwhile, I just realized I haven't dipped into the chat at all. If I can find a couple of good questions, I'm sure there's lots of them. But let me ask you this: when you were talking to our latest generation of ladies in these great roles, the Marys and Tawny and Christina, and did you do anything in your interaction during interviews that shocked or surprised them? Did you leave any of them gobsmacked just with topics that came up or saying the way it was or anything? Did
Yes,
you?
yes, I did. I said, and I asked this of most women, in the younger generation. I knew the older ones all knew it very well. I said, "Has anyone ever told you that you need to be effable to get a job?"
Right, right.
And, Jess's response was shock and awe and no, because buildings would have burned. And my heart surged with that. It's like, thank God that's dying. Thank God.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we had the Me Too movement, but then things retrench. And so,
That's the thing. Everything slides. That's why it's important to talk. And also to, France is going through a huge trial right now about it all, and they're saying over there is, not your shame, their shame. Put the shame where
mm,
it belongs. And having been, someone who was kidnapped and raped,
mhm.
I fully agree. Not my shame, not mine. And that's when you can start to heal from these things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Guys, people are commenting, but I'm not seeing so many. People are all in agreement with us and with you. So,
No, no, not affable. Affable is a great thing to be. No, the letter F-able, because I don't think I can say it here.
oh no, no, you can, but no, I got it. Yeah, I
You
don't know
got
what.
it.
Yeah. No. And you addressed that early on. So yeah. Not affable as in AFF,
Yeah,
but
no, I think affable is a great, characteristic to have.
that's it's good for your sanity too, your
Yes.
own. Um, I'm just rapidly looking
But
through
I
here.
love that they may not have known that. I love that.
Oh, yes.
Wonderful.
The innocence that,
I love that. Should
yes.
be that way.
Um, I'm just trying to look
Does
here.
anyone have a question? This
Yeah,
would be the time to I miss Tony Todd too.
we've had a rough time. Did you I mentioned Jerry, and did you have anything? I didn't get over that far along. Did you have a chance to talk to her? She kind of came. I was so glad the last 5-6 years we got her out of retirement back on camera to talk
Jerry
for the Taylor.
Taylor, I did. I went up to her house in Northern California
Good.
and was so impressed with, who that woman was. Really, really impressive woman.
But another one like Dorothy Fontana, she was so humble about, she wasn't like, yes, and I broke a glass ceiling this way, that's not Jerry's way. And even when they ran the show, that wasn't her way. But
That wasn't evidently, it wasn't Lucy's way either, and yet she did so much for women. I mean, think about back in that day,
Mhm.
women were either glamorous or funny. To do both, to make yourself look horrible, to get a laugh, she did all kinds of things. She had a person of color as a husband and had him star on TV with her.
Mhm.
Unheard of stuff. But she never wanted that, recognition evidently.
That way. She just
No,
wanted to
not
do her
that
work.
way. Yeah, it's just
Do
how
her
she
work.
thought.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, I'm just going to say this, gang. If we take a couple of questions, if somebody's got something else for Nana, go ahead and throw it in. Even if you ask it before and I missed it, and it's a good question.
Is there
Um,
any chance the unprinted cut parts could be published as part 2 or in any other form?
I was going to ask you because I know a lot of them were filmed, and you thought about doing a film version.
A lot of them were filmed. Most of the ones that were filmed, we got, except, one, and I don't know that I would have see, that's the thing people say, "Are you doing an audio version? Are you doing this?" I have no idea. It's like I didn't know Worf was coming on our show. I was the last one to know. So if Insight decides to do something like that, maybe indeed those parts will come in and make another book. But I definitely would want to do many more. If there was a chance of a second book, I'd want to do many more interviews. And excuse me, Holly Hunter, Michelle Yeoh,
Yes.
to have these women who have been in the business and had such experience, I would love to know what it was like for them. I can't imagine.
Well,
So,
Star Trek's been so lucky to have them and expand that.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
but so many more.
So Jesse at Crusher Convo Pod, who glowingly reviewed your book too, said when you spoke to Gates, she lost her mind when she said that Gates has to hide her pregnancy because Nana was pregnant first, because apparently women can't be pregnant at the same time.
Yeah.
Just the way that was,
Yeah. And to Gates's credit, all these years, when I interviewed her for the book, that's when I found that out. And it was shocking to me, and she never made me feel it. She never said it, because as a mother, at the time, it was hard enough to have those hours, and it's all up to you. It's like no one's gonna help you with that situation. Today, it seems like it's different. But back then, it was, "Well, you decided to take this job, so we're
Right.
not going to accommodate you in any way."
We're not sending you away, so you should be lucky or whatever.
And I did. I felt so lucky. I thought I was gonna get fired. I really did.
Or just take a long trip to Bajor for a year at the least. Right?
I thought I would get replaced for
Yeah.
sure. I really did.
So William here says, I don't know, maybe you consider this to be an autobiography. Are you going to be a Are you going to do a standalone autobiography or thought about it?
You know, I just started to think that I'm going to write again.
I mean, there's a lot in this about you personal, but it's
There
obviously
is.
not the whole story.
No, it's not. It's not the whole story. It's the story. It's the most important 7 years of my life, I would say, the most
Mhm.
impactful. And it's certainly gone for the next decades. It's those 7 years gave me purpose and changed my brain and strengthened me to
Mhm.
somebody that I wouldn't have been if I hadn't played Major Kira. Uh, so but there is a lot more, and the really more interesting than me is my family. So one of these days, I'm going to start putting my family's story down.
Wow. So Zahir said, "Is there are there any characters of any gender on New Trek that you especially connect with?" I
Oh,
guess.
that I especially connect
Yeah,
with.
since you've gotten to do some research and meet some of the folks on both sides of the camera.
Well, personally, Zahir, I would say that I connect with all these women. Um, in terms of a character that I go, "Ooh, I wanna be that," I would say it's Jess Bush's character. Um,
Mhm.
that wild, she's got a wild hair up her butt, and she's crazy interested in what she does, and she's ready to take on other things. I think she's wonderful. But I started to see these new treks, and I understand that there are everyone is always, destroying Trek. We destroyed Trek. TNG destroyed Trek, believe it or not.
Oh yes, oh
Yeah,
yes.
Voyager did. We all did.
They'll
I
slap Star Trek on anything and expect us to buy it. Yeah.
I asked Michelle Paradise, one of the executive
Mhm,
producers
mhm. Good.
yeah, Discovery. You did. Are you destroying Trek? And she said, "Oh yeah, yeah, we've definitely destroyed it." It's just, that's part of it. But I look at these new shows and just the women, just through this lens, and I see all of us that came before, even though we were varied, we were variations of cultured roses where the stems are trained, and you're going to get a big red bloom, and it makes a beautiful bouquet. But I look at these young women now, and they're wildflowers, and to me,
Mhm.
that's the most gorgeous bouquet of all. They are all distinctive. You can sense their terroir. You can sense how they live, and their looks are wildly their own. And to me, it's like wildflowers, and I appreciate that because I don't see someone messing with them, making sure their stems are straight.
Right.
Long stem roses are beautiful, but they've been messed with a lot.
I'm 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 going back to why am I thinking of Grace Lee here and all of them from the 60s? Let me ask you this just because you mentioned Jess Bush and not so much about the actress, although that's what she does. Part of the pushback from some people had been delighted with something like Strange New Worlds revisiting the original series folks, right? And bringing them in probably one by one. But I know one of the things that really got me that I thought people missed the boat about, and since you have now met and or knew them both, people said, "Oh, well, I love Jess Bush and I love her Nurse Chapel, and it's but it's so different than what they gave Made." And I know it was the '60s, and I blah, blah, blah. And I want to say no. I think somewhere Majel is smiling watching that, but I also think that it's one of those. They had a thing when DS9 did the triples, right? And they blended the footage in, including the ships. And Mike Okuda had a theory. It's like, well, we're going to get a close up of the station in the Enterprise. And just because we didn't have it in the 60s, we're just going to get up closer than you'd ever seen before. And that detail was always there. You're like, that's how they explained it. And that's how I think about this. It's like, if the camera had been able to follow Chapel more of her day, I think Jess Bush's chapel is what she would have been. There were 2 or 3 times when Majel and Nurse Chapel actually saved the day, when she injected herself, they were carrying alien bodies, and she was the one out of everybody to say. But and there's 2 or 3 times she pulled a little medical psychology bit, and even out Fox McCoy with it. There were like 2 or 3 micro moments where she got to have a twinkle and a gleam, and not just say, "Yes, Dr. Hypo." Well, and to me, it's like that same thing. It's like we're just seeing a lot more of Chapel, but I think the way they're writing Chapel and Jess Bush is totally in line with if they'd given her the role and let Majel run with it, it would have been a lot like Loxana Troy. I mean, you see what she did with Loxana. So I think it was totally in her wheelhouse to do it. So anyway, that's just a little.
We both know the powerhouse that Majel was, and the creativity and it was bubbling over. And I think that she would have loved to play Nurse Chapel like this. I think she would absolutely love it. It's simple fact, Nurse Chapel wasn't explored. That's all.
Right.
She didn't have much going on, and that wasn't Majel's fault at all.
Yeah.
She just wasn't fleshed out. But that's just the way it was.
Yeah, just the way it was. Well, if anything, Loxana was a little bit of I don't want to say a consolation prize, but it's like, okay, Majel, here, now you can show us what you got. And even later on, some of the dramatic moments that she had. The turbo lift scene with Odo, with Renee. And
that's the other thing, because Majel took me out and took me to a Japanese restaurant and drank me under the table when she first came on the show. And she, just like Gates, she never said, "You're doing the role I wanted to do. I was first officer." And now, how many years later, you're getting to do it. She never did that. That's grace. That's interesting to me. She supported me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, listen, Nana, this has been a joy and a treasure. I hope it's not been I know you've done some interviews for the book, and I hope you do a few more. So I hope this has been a little bit different. Hasn't been a same old, same old.
It's never same old. I just wish that we could go over here and just talk here. Hello from Germany. Glad to see you here. But this has been a joy. This has been wonderful.
Good. Well, it's been great to see you. It was great to see you the night good to see you in the Voyager documentary. I should tell, it's not spoiling it for anybody. There's been 2 premieres so far. So it's good to see you the other night. But thank you for joining us. And so I look forward to reading the rest. I actually look forward to being able to turn pages eventually, but I'll turn PDF pages for now.
It's a different experience. It's much more fun with the book. And just in case, here it is.
Yeah. Can you open it and flip because there's gorgeous photos all the way through?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a coffee table book at all. There's tons and tons of good, juicy, meaty interviewing and meat, but there's some great photos too.
Right? Yeah, wonderful photos.
Good deal.
Thank you so much, Larry. It was a joy to all of you.
Thanks, Nana.
You bet.
All right, everybody. We're coming up. Wow, she stayed with us nearly an hour, which that's Nana. Just as a reminder, though, before we go, I want to remind everybody, for one thing, if you didn't see, it is a Tuesday twofer, and it was a Tuesday for the Trek Files. The great Dave Rossi was my finale guest. We talked about all these anniversaries this year, but haven't said much about Generations. And Dave and I looked at some Generations call sheets. Actually, we didn't. We looked at Voyager call sheets from shooting the pilot. We mentioned Generations going on at the same time. Anyway, we talked with the Voyager documentary. We talked about Geneviève Bujold, yes, but an awful lot of other things that were going on at the same time with the creation of Voyager. And there's a pretty healthy dose of Voyager in Nana's book here, too, with Kate and Jerry and a Jennifer Lean section and a Roxanne, of course. We'll be back with season 13 in another month or so. Right in the middle of the holidays, give you a little relief from that. Hey, everybody, I know I need to update this, but I'm going to call out my Patreons here, our TTL Club gang, okay? So thank you, Chuck A., James Kerwin, Diana Hopkins, Jesse at Crusher Convo, Lawrence Todd, Helbjörg Gundjonsson, Glenda Bruton, Andrew Jasimski, Josh Patton, Pranakasha Productions, Chris Jiggins, Keith Rombach, and Comedy Forecast. And our live wires, Rob McLean, Byron Bailey, J.R. Poole, Alan Huensi, James, Dave Gregory, Greg Wickstrom, and Kay Sushafsky. It's a simple Patreon. It's just $5 and $10. I want to thank everybody, especially the last couple of years. We've been expanding out now, having guests like Nana, and just being a little more, hopefully, all together here with the presentation. Thanks so much, everybody. Patreon.com/Trekland Live. Yes. And it's getting cooler, but that doesn't stop us. It's still great travel weather around LA if you want to come and do something you can't do anywhere else. And you can't do it with Dr. Trek being your concierge guide and props wrangler and all of that. TreklandTreks.com. Check it out. I love to have you come with us on a Trekland Trek, right? Second Opinion is up right now from the last at Second Opinion, right? Not a hot take, not a quick take, but we let the dust settle a few days and you get a second opinion from Dr. Trek about all the fresh Trek episodes. We had 3 months off there, 4 months off. Things are slacking up, but thank goodness Lower Decks is back and most everyone seems to be loving them. And I still hope I can bring a little bit of a different take to Lower Decks. Bite-sized chunk there, just 15, 20 minutes. And yes, Cadet Alice watches Prodigy. Is still a thing. We've got 2 episodes down. I just need to post them. I hope you're paying attention and enjoying everything on the YouTube channel. So please like and subscribe that as well as following everything else, right? And what that means is, yep, Larry Nemecek on Twitter, X. I'm still there. We're debating what's going on these days or whether I should add another channel. I'll let you know. Otherwise, yeah, Facebook and Instagram. And here on YouTube, please like and subscribe and ring the bell and do all the things and share. Portal47.net is the prescription for the post-con blues, for the in-between event blues. It's like a backstage pass all year long, a mini con all year long. And love to have you. Love to have you join the Portales. That's going to do it, gang. I could just, there's... the few times that SoonerCon back in Oklahoma City has had a Trek guest, I think the last one was Nana, 2018, 2019, and they let me have the honor of sitting down and doing that. It's almost effortless. There's enough history and time that we can get off on minutia of in Heart of Stone when you were encased in the. I mean, we could talk minutia like that, but there's so many big trends. Then you heard Nana. She sat down at a very introductory level. Now I have to talk to Andy about what she did to light her on fire. And Nana's like, oh, I need to get up to speed with research. And like she said, go back to school. That was an interesting little angle there to find out about, because if whatever homework she did for this is really apparent, like I said, this is not a happy, glossy, one-off magazine. It's there's a lot of meat here to chew on. And across all the eras. I'm not saying it wrote itself, but there's a lot of tones here. And I see, as she was working on this book, I almost asked her about which came first, the book idea or the Mama Nana Instagrams, which got a lot of people through the pandemic, part of their pandemic therapy regimen, sanity keeping. But yeah, so one more time, I'm going to help her out here. Boom. There's Star Trek Open a Channel, a Woman's Trek. That's just such a tiny representative picture there on the front, but it gives you an idea of crossing all the eras. So we will see you next Tuesday. Who knows what will happen by then? Who knows what will happen in this crazy world of ours? But I'll just say, please, please, please stay healthy and do all the things, would you? Please. And I say this, you know what I mean? When I say stay woke, I mean keep your eyes open, your ears open for the things you didn't know and the things that may pass you by of all kinds. Trek well, everybody.